It's cutting out.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Life Mastery TV. I'm Tommy Stoffel, and I'm back from an amazing journey. Last week, I'll tell you a little bit about that coming up in the next half hour. But before then, I'd like to introduce my partner, co-host, producer, director, and all-around great guy, David McLeod. David, how the heck are you today on this Friday?
Hey, good morning, Tommy. Good to see you again. I'm doing really well. I've had a problem with my right eye that I've been to see several specialists about, and yesterday I had, oh, this was so cool. This was my fear story. They needed to poke my eye with a needle, and I was the one responsible for being perfectly still. You know, they can't hold the eye still. They can hold my head still, but they can't hold the eye still. And I had to sit there and just look straight ahead as this needle's coming into my eye, knowing that it's all good, and I could just feel my body tensing up. And that's what we're talking about today, Tommy. We're talking about fear and some of the challenges that we have to deal with. And it's going to be fun. And it's going to be fun because we have this amazing woman with us, Mina Jiwa. Mina is a practitioner of the Face Your Fear and Do It Anyway line of trainings, and she's just an awesome person. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, Mina, because you're coming to us from the UK, aren't you?
That's right. It is evening here. Yes, David.
Well, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
7 o'clock UK time.
So, Mina, tell us a little bit about the work that you do and why you have gotten involved in helping people work through their fears.
Well, I was somebody, David, who was living with a lot of fears. I realized in my life, quite late in my life, I think about when I was about 45, that I wasn't really living the life that I would love to live. And I was fearful of judgment and fear of rejection. And therefore, I looked into a lot of self-development classes and books, and I found some classes like Zest for Life, which absolutely started to change my life. I read Susan Jeffers' book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, which helped me to overcome and release a lot of my fears. And so now I am actually living the kind of life I want. I'm much happier. And I just felt that some of the tools that I learned were so powerful, and nobody had taught me these at a young age. And I just felt that everybody must learn these tools. So then I trained as a self-development trainer and started running these courses myself. And I have a lot of personal experience now to talk from. So and
that's
I just
awesome. And one thing I notice, and this Tommy can relate to this too, I'm sure, is very often the thing that we love to do and teach really comes from our own pain, our own wounds, our own challenges in our life, things that we've had to overcome. Is that true for you, Tommy?
Absolutely. And as Mina, you're talking about the fear of. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for being here, and amazing for the work you're doing. And why the heck didn't they teach us this in school, right? So here we are later in life, waking up and going, what the hell's going on? And how come nobody ever taught me this concept of fear and how it impacts my life and what I can do to overcome it? So thank you for stepping up into that role as a teacher, because we need you and we need people like you, right, to do this, to open this up and to take fear out of the fear place and put it into a place of presence and acceptance and healing.
That's right. What I found most powerful was when I heard, or I was taught, fear is false evidence or false expectations appearing real. And 95% of our fears don't actually, are never real. And I thought, wow, that's so powerful. If we are only taught those things, how we can apply them in our lives. And I must tell you a story. Recently, what happened, I'm also a podiatrist, and I still practice 1 day a week. And I had this elderly lady, she's in her 80s, came to have her feet done. And as usual, we sometimes get talking. I sometimes get talking to people as to what kind of work I do. And she started telling me all about how when she wakes up in the morning, she's always so worried. She's thinking about all the things that could happen to her children and her grandchildren. And then I just say to her, look, let me tell you one thing. Did you know our fears are false expectations or evidence that appears real? Then I explained to her all about it, wrote it down on a little slip of paper. And she came back last week after 3 months and she said to me, do you know, that has actually changed my life already. She walked out from my surgery after having her feet done. And her husband said, wow, you look really great. It must be your feet. She said, no, it's what the lady told me, which has gone in here. And she says, really, she's got all these little slips of paper everywhere. Her children come home and they say, what's this, Mom? She says, you don't worry. This is changing my life. So that was really nice to hear, that I made a little difference even while I was feet.
That's really awesome. And what you're pointing to here, Asmina, is very often our healing can happen simply from a change of perspective. When we look at something a little bit differently, and maybe in a way that no one had ever shown us before, or maybe we hadn't seen on our own before, all of a sudden that shift in perspective can just make everything else seem so free and open and easy. And just by telling that woman that FEAR is a great acronym for false evidence appearing real, I think you helped her see something that she hadn't thought of before. And probably without even describing it any further, she said to herself, wow, that means that most of the things that I'm worried about are just made up stories. So you see how we can transform our way of thinking just by looking at it from a different perspective. It's really amazing.
Yeah, and Asmina, I had that pretty much the same type of thing. That the lesson came to me that somebody said, and I used to wake up worried, like your friend did. I used to wake up worried all the time. Like I'd wake up worrying about what was going to happen that day, or if I was going to lose my job, or if I was going to pay my bills, all this stuff. Worry, 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 which is a form of fear. And somebody said to me something very similar. They said 99% of the stuff you worry about never happens. And that sunk in. I was like, oh, thank goodness. It's finally somebody made sense of something. Like you said, the fear, 95% of the fears aren't real. And I want to just touch upon that for a second. And I think it's more like 99%. But as David alluded to, and you say, 99% of the fears we have are just things in our head. They're actually synapses firing in our brain. They're not real events. They're not real danger. The 1% could be real danger, right? You're driving on the highway and something happens in front of you, or a tire blows out, which happened to me last week. For that instant, you're kind of in danger, but if you're not all caught up in the fear out there, you're able to focus and just deal with the situation in front of you. So it's such a powerful teaching, and thank you for bringing it to your friend and to other people, because it's such a simple thing, but when they get it, man, it opens up it lets go of so much suffering and so much anguish and so much heaviness, and it just opens people up instantly.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it's amazing. And another thing that I really found also, which is nobody had taught me, was that everybody feels fear. And I used to think, because I'm afraid of something means I can't do this stuff. You know, just because I've got fear around it, it was as if, no, you can only do something when there's no fear, when you don't feel it. And what I realized actually everybody feels fear, but it's actually what you do with that fear that makes the whole difference. Do you still say, oh, I can feel the fear, it's okay, but I really want to do it, I'm still going to go ahead and do what I want to do? And of course, the other truth about fear is that the only way to get rid of that fear is to keep doing what you want to do, you know, whether it's public speaking or being assertive or whatever. Once you do it, and you've done it a few times, then the fear subsides. But when you do something new, the fear comes back. I mean, you know, I'm out of my comfort zone doing this because it's the first webinar I'm doing. But I didn't want to say to you, no, I can't do it because I'm scared. Because I don't do it, I'll never be able to do it. So those are some of the other truths that I learned about fear, which again I found, you know, was just amazing.
Yeah. I totally resonate with what you're saying there. It's been my experience that anytime I just, you know, look at my fear right in the face and just step through it, it tends to dissipate. The moment I say to myself, this is an unreal fear, and I go ahead and do it anyway, it just dissipates, like you said. And to
Yes.
me, that is a definition of courage. And in fact, I would say being courageous is one thing you can't do unless there is fear. You know, you have to have the fear there in order to have the courage to step through it. And what does courage mean, really? It just means heart. It comes from heart. Bring your heart into everything you do, and all will be well.
I'm gonna share a story that a real life example of everything we're talking about here. I was jeeping last week in a place called Moab, Utah, and some of these jeep trails are up on cliffs. They're high places, so there is an element, if you're not paying attention, of little danger. But that's a whole nother story of why jeeping is such a great teaching tool. But there's a guy there, and he's driving a jeep. Well, his wife was a little nervous to drive with him, so she came with me for a little bit. And she's like, I'm really surprised my husband bought this jeep because he is terrified of heights. And this guy's an executive in a company. And so we all have fear, right? As Mina, we all have fear. This guy's terrified of heights, but he buys a Jeep knowing that he's going to put himself into that situation, David, to have courage.
Exactly.
Well, we're in a place that is literally the place where Thelma and Louise drove the car off the cliff. This is the site where they made the movie. 1,000-foot drop we had driven up to. It took us 2 hours to get there. I get to this cliff, and he is way back by the Jeeps, this guy. He is not coming up near this cliff. And I get up there and I kind of kneel down about 20 feet from the edge, and I walk out on my hands and knees, and then I get on my belly for the last 5 feet, and I inch out, and I peer over this sheer 1,000-foot drop. And pretty soon, who's coming up? But he does the same thing. He lays down right next to me. He looks over the freaking edge. That is facing your fear. That is courage. And that guy is dissolving his fear of heights right there in front of us. And it was so powerful and so amazing and so real, right? Because we all have these fears and anxieties, whether they're something you can put a finger on or whether they're somewhere in our subconscious. But when you find them, freaking face them. Have the courage, and you're going to just free yourself. Leaps and bounds, right?
Yeah. Sounds like we're coming up with a bumper sticker here. Find it. Feel it. Face it. And free yourself. There you go.
Freedom. Yes, I think it's all about freedom to be who you want, have what you want in life. And if you don't face our fears, then you're just stuck. And you have to, like you said, you have to go through that fear. And sometimes, living with day-to-day fears, especially emotional fears, living with them day to day is actually much, much worse than just facing it and just saying, I'm going to just do this, and then just going through it. And that's what.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. There's I'm reading a book right now called The 15 something Laws of Growth by John C. Maxwell. And one of the chapters, he refers to this phrase, do it now. Just do it now. It's not about waiting until you get ready for it. It's not about waiting until the fear goes away. It's about, okay, this is what you said you were going to do. Do it now. It might not be perfect. It might not be exactly what you expect. It might not, live up to some standard or expectation or whatever that you imagine that you have, but you will have done it. And the beauty of having done it is that now you can look back and you can say, all right, now I'm ready to do it again. And when I do it again,
that's right.
I can do it better. You can't do it better the first time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, as Mina, you said, and David got into it a little bit about emotions, right? So now we're going a level deeper, right? Having a fear of heights is something kind of outside. Having a fear of spiders, having a fear of flying is kind of something you can face and easily identify. I'm a self-taught student of emotions and emotional intelligence, and I sometimes feel that people are afraid of emotions, of feeling. We're almost afraid of feeling because we're not really taught how to handle emotions. So I kind of came up with this little word called fearlings, this fear of feelings, and it's deeper, right? sometimes we get afraid of being afraid. Sometimes we get afraid of falling in love. Sometimes we get afraid of opening up and being transparent, of being honest, of being truthful, of being who we are. And that's a very emotional, those are very deep emotional fears that, again, we were not taught about in school, and I wasn't taught about by the people in my life because they didn't know about it. So it's another level of peeling back the onion of the layers of fear, but one that, just to put out there on the table, that it's part of our experiencing fear and overcoming fears and having and building the courage to, David, just do it. Just get out there and do it, to face it, to try it. I've never met a fear that I faced that harmed me. I never met a fear that I faced that I came away feeling worse or more buried or more boxed in. I've always been liberated. Every time I face the fear, it's always better for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is why I think the word freedom resonates with me, because I feel that having faced so many fears and just those these, just like peeling the onion layers, just as you say, because really, where did it all come from? Was a lot of the conditioning and the fears I was living with were really fears with rejection. So that's another way we are fooled by our fears, that we hide behind blaming other people a lot of times. And with me, the fear of rejection was I was blaming other people for not accepting me or not appreciating me. Or, my husband, for example, if he voiced something that he liked doing, or something that he voiced that he didn't feel he liked me to do, then I took it as the truth, that I have to do this, otherwise I'll be rejected. And that is a deep emotional fear that I really, really had to start facing. And that's sometimes not as easy as the physical fear, like you said, going down a cliff, or like for me, it was putting my face in water also was fearful. But this is a much deeper fear, and it takes practice, and it takes much longer to to start knowing that I am responsible for my own happiness, and so I take action to maybe speak up. To be more vulnerable. Like you said, we're just so frightened to say what we feel. And once I started speaking up and talking about how I feel about things, and then people start to realize, and really, I thought they would all reject me. I had this fear of judgment. But really, in reality, it doesn't. People don't reject you. When you talk about your feelings, I think you actually connect with people a lot more.
Absolutely.
You create much closer connections. So you have to show your vulnerability sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been my experience too. 100%. I totally agree with what you're saying, Mina. There's something I wanted to kind of come back around on, and that was, Tommy, you were talking a little bit about the fear of feelings. And I remember I have a teacher. His name is Hugh Dalconzo, and he's a really pretty amazing guy. But one of the sound bites that he created that just really resonates for me, and it has to do with feelings. He says, what you express, you get to free from yourself. But what you repress, you get to keep. And that's a very, very important teaching, because what it means is if I don't express my feelings, and that includes my fear, by the way, then I'm pushing it down, I'm locking it inside, and that is going to stay inside me, and it's going to have a negative impact on me, whether I like it or not, because the energy is there. It's going to have that impact on me. And the more I repress stuff, the more damage I do to myself. So really, I owe it to myself, and this is now coming back to what Mina said about self-responsibility. It's my responsibility to express my feelings in a safe and healthy way so that I can be free of them, and therefore I can live my life more fully. I can choose to repress them if I want to, but that ain't going to serve me. No matter what story I may have about what other people might think or how they might judge me or any of that stuff, the truth is, as Mina said, if I share my feelings, I create connection, I create love, I create oneness. And that's really what we're all about here, isn't it?
Yeah, and as Mina, you said it nicely, right? And David, you just connected it. Same thing as Mina. I've never expressed myself or opened up or felt vulnerable and been met with anything other than openness and appreciation. Even the people that maybe haven't opened themselves up yet, maybe people that haven't, made themselves more transparent yet. When you open up to people like that, they just naturally open up to you, because everyone hungers for that connection, that deeper connection, that interaction that is beyond thought. And when you do it first, when you take the initiative, it takes a lot of courage, right? To stand up here in front of an audience and just be vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a better word than vulnerable, because vulnerable implies somehow weakness, but vulnerable is so powerfully strong. And you, like as Mina, you said, and David, as you've experienced and I've experienced, anytime I've ever expressed myself where I thought I was going to be maybe ridiculed or mocked or put myself out there, I've always been met with overwhelming appreciation, gratitude, love, thanks. You know, it goes so counter instinctively, or counter the way your brain thinks, or the way your brain convinces you it's going to go. It goes just the opposite way, and it's always very opening and appreciative and loving.
That's right. And I like what Mariam Williamson says, that you actually give other people permission when you do something, where you face the fear, or you shine your light. And Rumi says, you are the light that shines the world. Mm-hmm. And if we don't actually show our true self, and David, you said, when you come from your heart, it is from your heart that that pushes you to shine. And we are so afraid to shine. And I truly believe that because I've faced my fears, that I am able to really express my own potential and express my gifts, which then I can give to other people. But if I just remain that little mouse and just I'm afraid, keep being afraid of shining and don't face my fears, then I'm really not going to live my life, but I'm also not expressing my own gifts and my potential, which could help other people.
Yeah, and Marianne Williamson also says that you don't do the world any favors by dimming your light so that they can shine brighter. That doesn't help the world at all. Now I've paraphrased what she said. She has a beautiful poem that she put out as part of her Return to Love book. But that phrase has always touched me. You're not serving anybody by letting your fears hold you back from showing up as the full, magnificent, beautiful, spiritual, divine being of love and light that you really are. There is just no point in that. And the other, I know for myself, when I'm standing with someone else who I have this judgment, they are really shining, they're really bright, I know that sometimes I do feel myself shutting down a little bit. But that's just my irrational fear telling me that I can't be as bright as this person. And it's not true. We can equally shine. Just because you shine bright doesn't mean I have to shine dim. And just because you shine dim doesn't mean I have to shine dim. You know what I'm saying? We get to shine our own brightness and our own unique brand of light and color and love and everything else. So I say, find your fear, embrace it, and then let your heart fill you with the courage to go through it and love that fear for what it's warning you about and move forward.
Yeah, guys, I'm gonna take us back a second. Asmina, did you have something? Okay. I'm gonna come back to maybe a root, right? So a lot of us have this fear of shining bright, and in my experience with talking to people, and myself included, a lot of times as a child, right, we're shining. We're just out there, we're playing, we're happy, and maybe we have like a lifelong intention of bringing light to the world, but we don't know that yet, and our beings around us don't know that yet. And I find story and story again, life and life again, of people I've talked to, that there are people in our lives who have lost the light, right? They have, never had it, or they never been aware of it. They weren't taught it in school, so they're kind of dark, or they're kind of scared, or they're kind of living in their own box. And when some little kid comes running around, who's 20 years younger than them, or whatever it is, and one of two things seems to happen. Either that being that doesn't have it wants it, so they find ways to extract it, or they squash it. so it's not in their presence and doesn't remind them of their own pain and suffering. And I've seen that happen to children. I've heard stories of that happening to children. It's probably happened to you guys and other people who are listening, right? So we just have to understand where it comes from. It was very real at the time. Our brightness got squashed, or our brightness got dimmed, or our brightness was told to shut the fuck up. Yeah. And now we're adults and we can stand in it again and shed that fear of being squashed or overpowered or ruled. And so I just wanted to kind of, that got a little deep, but I wanted to bring that to the surface.
Thanks, Tommy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also
have you got a little process or something that you help people work through when they're dealing with a particular kind of fear? What sorts of steps do you take them through?
Well, mostly it's to really just understand that fears are false, and that so it's really, first of all, it's about understanding our fears, and a lot of people don't know these facts that everybody feels fear. It's not real. So understanding them, and then really to find out what is the fear you're facing. Is it that you're not taking responsibility, or whether you're wanting to be comfortable in your comfort zone, and you're just too scared to have that courage we talked about to do what you really, really want to do in life. So it's really about recognizing your fear and then asking the questions behind that fear. Is it because you're just thinking it's other people's responsibility to make you happy? Or is it, so once you start to understand that you need to take responsibility, then what is the action you're going to take? So it's really just about identifying the fears and then going towards the actions that you're going to take with those fears. Sometimes it's unknown fears. We are afraid of the unknown fears. And I think they come up with, again, because we don't trust the ability that we have to cope with things that happen. So many times we're afraid of, things that might happen in life, but we are fearful of it today when we don't even know if it will happen or not. And so it's really about saying yes to life. It's about trusting that each one of us has the ability to cope when things happen. And I think we need to trust the universe as well, that the universe is always there to support us. And also to understand that when you do something new, fear will come up again, and you have to really, again, just remember those, those principles you've learned. So I feel they're lifelong principles. And once you know them, then you question your fears. At the moment, I'm trying to shine my light even more by writing a book.
Oh, awesome.
And yes, and every time, I write it, I allocate a day to write it, and then the day goes, and then when I'm coming back to it, all these fears come back about, other people being better than me, other people's books being better than me. And so I have to start using my own process and questioning, and also, reminding myself about my past experience of coming out of my comfort zone, and everything was all right. And I have to keep reminding myself, and hopefully, once I've written the book, I'll be over that fear again. So it's just, the fears just come up when you do something new, and you just have to identify what the fear is, and then just work your way through by asking questions.
Wow, that's great, Asmina. Thank you so much for that, and congratulations. I didn't realize you were writing a book. Well done. I'm kind of in that phase myself, and I know exactly what you're talking about. How each day when I go to start writing something new, that whole story starts coming right back again. And to me, the answer is just do it. Really, just do it. Right. So here's what I'm capturing today here in this whole conversation. The first thing is to find the fear. I'm going to use the 4 F's today, okay? Find the fear. Then feel the fear. Because you can't really do anything about it until you feel it and begin to understand what it's all about. So that's what I'm kind of paraphrasing what you said. Face the fear. Face it. Just look it right in the eye and say, now I know who you really are, and I know you're not real or you're whatever, and I'm going to just kind of work through you. And then finally, I would say forgive. Because what happens when we have these fears is that we tend to hold ourselves back. So forgive yourself if you've been holding yourself back, and don't judge yourself for anything that you've done up to now. really all you're doing is choosing a different action, something new that can have a positive impact in your life. All right? So find the fear, feel the fear, face the fear, and forgive yourself. Those are the 4 things that I want to leave us with today. Tommy, you want to do a quick wrap-up and let us know what's happening next week?
Mina, thank you so much for joining us. Very enlightening, beautiful conversation. I feel freer from it. And we'll add that 5th fear, and be free, right?
Thank you.
The fifth F. So thank you so much. Best
Thank you for
your book, and we hope to have you back again with us sometime in the future.
Thank you for the opportunity and for inviting me. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Of course. All right. Well, if anybody out there is keeping count, which David and I are, this is the 103rd episode we've had of Life Mastery TV, which means next week is 104. And if you do your math, that is 2 years. 52 times 2, 104. Next year we're having our 2-year anniversary special. We're having a bunch of guests join us, and the topic is just 2 years of Life Mastery TV, and we'll see where it goes. So love to have you join us then. Thanks for 2 years of wonderful times and experiences and enlightening conversations. And I'll say bye and peace for now.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.